Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for another session of hashtag Gather to Grow here with Food from Mzansi on Twitter Spaces. It is an absolute pleasure to have my speakers join me tonight. Good evening to all the regulars. So great to be back and to be able to have a discussion tonight. We're talking both canola and castor beans because last week our session got cut short because of load shedding, unfortunately. So I thought it would be great just to welcome my guest from last week back as well, just to be able to finish off the conversation that we started and also to talk about castor beans, but more a broader perspective. So I'm going to give my guest a chance just to introduce him. And of course, my name is Dawn Numdu and I'm your host for the session. Ridwan, I'm going to start with you. Welcome back. Thanks for being able to join me again.
It's lovely to be here again with canola. The thing that I've been learning from last week and until this week is that the canola plant is a fighting plant because from our starting on, as I saying, on 2017, and my yields grow a little bit yields with canola. To be understanding plant is very difficult because it's an Afrikaans sê hulle fyn gevoelig. If you don't give it the right handling or the right course from tomorrow I'm going to give it fertilizer just to give it a little bit boost, and from there then because I already spraying it last week, I give it a nice spraying last week. But this year is very wet on our side in the Overberg as well because it's in the winter season. It is our winter rain, but from January month until now our millimeters is it's 360 millimeters of rain that we already have. So our lands are very, very wet. For the canola to grow in this condition is very difficult. But last year it was a little bit drier than this year. And last year my yields was around 1.7 per hectare on one cultivar. And on the second it was almost 2 ton per hectare. I'm still learning about this cultivar. The deeper I grow in it, the deeper I love it because for the past 5 years, we have received better yields than before 2017 that we're starting with canola. But canola is a very good cultivar and it's reliable, especially with our production cost as well, because the reason that we are planting canola is to cover our production plan and expenses as was buy every time. And you see, for me as well, I needed to study this cultivar. Some of the guys begin planting from the 1st of April until the end of April. But this year I planted a little bit later than I used to plant. I can see the results as well because it's very, very wet. This week is a better week for us, especially in our winter season. This is the best week. The sun is out. You've seen on the news in Joburg the snow as well. I love this cultivar. It gives me my financial boost as well. I will recommend it for everyone who wants to plant this cultivar. There's some new cultivars as well. Laser is now our newest one. The one that we are a little bit worried about is our seeds. And the thing is, if we wanted to plant our seeds and produce it ourselves, because the most of our cultivars coming from Australia, and last year they didn't produce so much. We did have a problem with getting our cultivars here in South Africa, but we managed to plant our old ones in Afrikaans noem hulle dit terughousaad. We did plant our holding back seed as well. So yeah, but the results of canola is very, very good.
Thanks, Luduan. I know that your time is a little bit limited, so I won't take up too much of your time. Thanks for sharing that experience with the specific commodity. Yuan, who's an agronomist for Southern Oil, spoke about the industry not being as developed as we would like to, but there has been a lot of growth over the past 5 years. And he actually said that a lot of the consultancy and shared advice on the specific commodity actually is free. So I think last week you and him both connected. And I'm so happy that we could create that space for you to share the knowledge and gain from each other to be able to grow in the canola industry. You didn't do a proper introduction in the beginning, but you're a farmer and you're based in the Western Cape, right? Just for everyone's sake, Ridwan.
I'm in the Western Cape. I'm in the Overberg area where they call it the gold mine these days because it's so beautiful on this side. I have a very good production plan as well with my crops because I'm planting some wheat and barley as well. So with my production plan with canola as well, because the climate is really changed, because my production plan goes like this. It's wheat 1 year, the next year it's barley, then canola, then the fourth year, then planting a lot of lucerne, and just to give my cattle some food as well. So I'm leasing land here in Napier, Western Cape, in the Overberg area. It's around 700 hectares as well. So for me, it's very big, but Agri Dwala, they are leasing the land and we are under leasing them. It's a group as well, and we've been farming. This is our 7th year that we are farming. I'm still learning, and one day, if you want to visit, you can give me a call when you go through here, and then and you can come and visit my farm. Or anyone who is listening and come in this way, you can give me a call. You can get my number by Dawn as well. We can take it from there. This is a leasing land that I'm leasing, and it's above 700 hectares. Farming, it's an everyday thing. You learn new things every day. I have some people involved, and last week, you want to talk about Tian as well. He was here on Friday, so he could give me some advice as well. So for me in this industry, I have a lot of support as well. I have a mentor, Uncle Kusi van Sale. He's a huge part of me as well because he's mentoring me, and I have the government as well on my side. So for me to be learning about farming wasn't because I was working on a farm, and I was working on a farm for 8 years. So I have that experience to provide for South Africa.
Thanks, Eduard. That's amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think you've given us a lot to think about and consider, especially those who would want to get into canola production. Elton, thank you so much for being here. Maybe just an introduction of yourself as we kick off the conversation from your side. Thanks.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back. Just some background about myself. I've been in the agriculture sector for close to 25 years, various levels from government, private sector. I participated in all aspects of the value chain and now focus on fruit exports, marketing, especially international fruit exports.
Elton, I wanted us to kind of get an understanding of what the cost of bean industry looks like. One of the economists that I regularly check in with said that from his observation, it seems that it's something that's, I wouldn't say trending, but there are possibilities for the specific crop and for farmers to either diversify or see how they can grow within that specific sector. I'm not sure what your take on it is in your position as someone who trades internationally.
The castor oil product has been with us since many generations. I think some of us grew up with it, knowing it for its medicinal purposes. It's not a largely grown crop in South Africa. In fact, in some areas, it's declared an invasive species. But its added value lies in the castor oil production, which stems from castor bean production. Basically, the plant is a bush type plant, almost looks like a weed. Some places it's declared as such, but it produces a bean, which in turn is then either machine pressed or using solvents to extract the oil. That oil is then used for medicinal purposes in cosmetics, health remedies, etc. But the new trend towards castor oil and castor bean extracts is around the biofuels initiatives, around synthetic oil replacements, where we have options of using castor oil as a lubricant. Those feasibility studies in some areas have been done. I know that UJC has done some studies, and we've seen some small-scale farmers up in the Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and some areas of KZN producing it. The difficulty with it, it is considered a poisonous plant, obviously due to its nature. It is a poisonous plant until processed. It's not an edible plant, but more the extract. And South Africa is relatively small in terms of the export market of castor bean and castor oil. We produce mostly for local consumption with not enough really for the export market. India is the biggest player in castor oil production, castor seed and bean farming. They produce over 1 million tons a year. So South Africa, although we do about 7 to 8, maximum maybe 10 tons a year, we do have some production, and it can be quite lucrative. Predictions are that you can get 300 to 500 kilograms oil per ton, and it's 1 ton per hectare. It can go up to 3 tons depending on irrigation systems, your planting methodologies, and production. But it can be a lucrative product to farm. The input costs are quite high in the terms of the extracting process. The production parts is relatively easy. It's irrigation and land preparation, but the capital intensive part comes in terms of the actual extract part of the process.
Thanks, Elton. And that's maybe why, I don't know, but I really struggle to get speakers to join this discussion even. Some are busy with new plans and they wanted to only talk to me later, and maybe I can pick up the conversation at a later stage to be able to talk to farmers directly about the experience with a specific commodity. I think what's interesting is just you mentioning the high input costs. What makes this specifically higher? And also, are there enough facilities for the agro processing of it locally, or do we just sell the bean and that then gets processed elsewhere? I just kind of wanted to understand the logistics of it. My one other speaker who's actually in the processing side just said that he's also having trouble with load shedding and network. So I do apologize for this. But Alton, maybe if you could just give us some insights in terms of the processing side of, if I'm a grower and I want to kind of explore this, where does one start? And where can I either, come in as a primary producer or on the agro processing side if it is something that is becoming more lucrative?
Thanks, Tony. I think the part that becomes capital intensive is the actual processing part where the oil is extracted from the castor bean or seed. The initial input costs in terms of land preparation, irrigation systems, that depends on the extent that you're going to be. That part is relatively easier to manage. We utilize the conventional production methodologies, irrigation systems, etc. The part does create the capital intensive part is actually your machinery or actual processing procedures. It is a labor intensive process. It is quite a technical process, and it requires facilities to be set up to do this. Obviously, because it is not such a commercialized product, you don't have processing facilities readily available. So most producers would either be small scale processors, meaning that their facilities are set up to look at specific markets or specific production processes within a small range. I know that feasibility studies have been done to put up processing facilities in Mpumalanga and Limpopo, but these are very localized. The key part is market attachment to the castor oil. We obviously know that you can find castor oil in your local retailers, pharmacies, and traditional herbalists, etc. The big element comes in is looking at the actual further value add in the sense of biofuels and other industries like that. I am aware that some of the bigger fuel companies are looking at options of expanding castor bean production, but obviously South Africa has not got to the stage where we've fully commercialized it. The technology and processes that go into the castor oil production are relatively simple, but the initial capital injection required to get the setup going, that's where your biggest cost driver comes in. And obviously the second part is your marketing and actually closing contracts with retailers or the cosmetic/herbal healthcare industries. I am aware that internationally countries haven't really expanded much due to the costs associated, your market scope. And quite often, if you don't have enough to sustain the market scope, you are basically looking at a balance ratio of risk higher than normal. But in South Africa, there is a demand, and it is something to look at based on the localized expansion possibilities and whether you could have a share in setting up these processes with fellow farmers or a cooperative type system.
Thanks so much for that, Alton. I think it really gives us a little bit more perspective of where we're at. But is there possibilities of where we could possibly be growing to? Is it just one of those commodities that will kind of stay at the same footing that it's now? Or is there a possibility for us to grow with it? I think in the beginning of the year, and I often do this where we focus on these crops of the year. And in the beginning of the year, I think we spoke about citrus, I think dragon fruit was one of those commodities that we looked at where it kind of filters over into the cosmetic side, where there's possibilities for the healthcare space as well. Can this be a possibility for this specific commodity too?
Thanks, Dawn. Yes, there are potential possibilities in the sense of further value add. I think in terms of castor bean production for the healthcare and cosmetics sections, that is fairly saturated in the sense that the markets are there, supply is there. The bigger potential lies in the biofuels slash lubricants environments and partnerships with your bigger producers or actual suppliers of these products. I know that studies are underway to expand possibilities of the biofuels aspect of it, but again, that depends largely on facilities, whether enough capacity is there to do it. The whole question gets pinned down on the end usage of the product. And that's where I think South Africa has lagged in the sense of trying to increase production to offset further possibilities in the value chain. Our best option in terms of this is, yes, look at the cosmetic industry. Where can linkages be drawn? Market research indicates that South Africa requires about 60 kgs a day to be produced from various regions in order to sustain daily production. It might not sound like much, but if you are within the market and you have got the market space, it is something to look at. I do believe that South Africa has got the possibility of expanding on this through government support, further research and development, and especially the private sector coming in. I believe that if we take that angle, we can produce and create space for small-scale farmers to produce castor beans. The possibilities are always there. It's just how we package it and how we get both government and the private sector to come on board to support small-scale producers.
Thanks, Elton. I think in that way, it gives me a better understanding of where we're at and where we could possibly be going to. And maybe there's a possibility of bringing people within the research space and the growers that are growing currently to come and talk about their experience on another session. I hope that we were able to at least touch on the important bits of this specific commodity. And I'm hoping to kind of do it again in the near future. Ridwan, if you could just share your last and final message. Thanks.
Someone told me a long time ago in farming, especially canola, some years it's good and some years it's bad, but keep on farming and keep growing. That's my goal. I want to grow and I want to achieve everything that I desire to. This is my first experience doing this on tour or anything. It's a nice experience as well for me to be a young farmer. I'm only 29 years old. Thank you for this experience. Every farmer that is listening, keep farming. You play a huge part in the South Africa. Keep learning. That's the thing. And canola is a very, very, very good cultivar. And please just give it a chance. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it's working, you will get the results. Thank you, Dawn and Alton. Thank you. You are a very good speaker, and I understand it fluently. And maybe I will give it a chance on this side and see where it will take me.
Thank you so much, Ridwan. 29 years old. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm hoping to share your details with some of my colleagues who can possibly, write about your journey within the sector. Always a focus of ours to celebrate young farmers within the industry who just keeps pushing and keeps doing their best despite the many setbacks that they face. So looking forward to sharing your story and seeing you grow within the sector. Thank you so much for being here and just being present and sharing some of your knowledge. Alton, maybe over to you. Just last comments. I'm hoping to invite you back when we talk about the castor bean and castor oil production within the South African context, but also Africa in the near future. Maybe just last and final comments from your side on the castor bean, castor oil production in Mzansi, and also just maybe just a broader encouraging word to growers within the space. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. It's always good to be on Gather to Grow, and thanks again for the opportunity. I enjoy discussing new opportunities and seeing as castor oil production is not seen as a commercial entity or commercial production elements. Look into it. It could be a good cash flow, especially within the smaller industries. It's something that I believe that can be a money or economic driver for rural areas, knowing the uses of it. I'll gladly be part of any discussions going forward. Redawan, you're really inspirational. Keep going at it. I like your thinking, your positivity. En soos hulle in Afrikaans sê, dis net die sterk bome wat die wind kan verdra. So hou aan wanneer die wind sal jou druk, maar druk terug. All the best to everybody, and yeah, thanks to Food from Mzansi team for hosting us. Love it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Alton. Appreciate both of you. Thank you to all my regulars for always sticking with me. I think it's so awesome that we've been growing this family over the past 2 years. And it's so great to be here once a week and listening to me and sometimes even my son. And just keep farming and keep shining within this industry. From my side, have a good one and talk again next week, same time, same space. Bye for now.